Imagine waking up to the news that the United States is now officially in an armed conflict not with another nation, but with drug cartels. These criminal organizations have just been redesignated, not simply as syndicates of crime, but as terrorist groups that America now pledges to battle using not just law enforcement, but military might. What does this dramatic escalation mean for America, for the region, and for the world? Let's break it down. In what may be remembered as a seismic shift in U.S. foreign and domestic policy, President Donald Trump has formally notified Congress that the United States is engaged in a non-international armed conflict with powerful drug cartels operating throughout the Western Hemisphere. Cartels now officially designated as terrorist organizations by the federal government. This notice, delivered from the Pentagon to Congress, marks a new era of confrontation against transnational crime, according to multiple memos and statements. The Trump administration asserts that these cartels are no longer simply lawless gangs, but have evolved into non-state armed groups with unprecedented resources, sophistication, and paramilitary capability. This declaration wasn't just political posturing. It followed a series of lethal U.S. military strikes at least 3 different operations in which U.S. forces struck suspected cartel boats in international waters south of the Caribbean, actions that resulted in 17 fatalities. So, what pushed the Trump White House to make such an aggressive move? Administration memos and briefings have made one line of thinking explicit. These drug cartels are now recognized as a continuous assault across borders by highly organized and heavily armed forces. According to the Pentagon's communication with Congress, these organizations have surpassed the methods and violence of ordinary criminal outfits. They now function almost as sovereign war parties, crossing borders at will, engaging in violence that directly threatens U.S. citizens and interests. These cartels, including Venezuela's notorious Tren de Aragua, stand accused not only of smuggling drugs, but of organized, armed assaults rooted in their control of lucrative transnational trafficking networks. Here's where things get even more unprecedented. By classifying cartel fighters as unlawful combatants and not simply criminals, the president has authorized the Department of Defense to treat cartel operatives essentially as enemy fighters, removing due process protections that apply to criminals. Under this enemy combatant doctrine, the U.S. military can detain or even lethally target suspected narco-terrorists not just on foreign soil, but potentially both abroad and at home. It's a legal and tactical leap that effectively moves cartel fighters into the domain of military targets, not just police chases or legal prosecution. Critics, especially from Congress, are raising red flags. Is this designation open-ended? Could it allow indefinite detention or secret military actions against anyone the administration deems a threat? So, what has the U.S. military actually done? According to memos and reporting, at least 3 high-profile strikes took place in September. In one publicly acknowledged case, U.S. forces struck and sank boats in the Caribbean, Vessels which officials claimed were ferrying combatants linked to drug cartels now on the terrorist list. The administration said these actions were taken in legitimate self-defense, though details including how individuals were identified and what imminent threat they posed remain classified. One point of controversy. CNN and congressional sources report at least one strike targeted a vessel that was reportedly fleeing the area, raising questions about the rationale of immediate threat and justifying the lethal force used. Inevitably, this campaign has ignited fierce debate on Capitol Hill and beyond. Democratic leaders, including Senator Reid, have lambasted the administration for both its secrecy and legal justification, claiming that President Trump is overstepping presidential powers by launching what amounts to clandestine military operations without sufficient public or congressional oversight. Critics caution that this approach could create a dangerous precedent, enabling future administrations to target not just criminal syndicates, but potentially political opponents under the broad label of terrorist or enemy combatant. There are also fears internationally that this escalation turning criminal suspects into warfare targets could destabilize relationships with neighboring countries and further militarize the hemisphere. International reactions are beginning to filter in, with some allies expressing quiet support for more muscular U.S. leadership against traffickers, while others voice deep concern that such military activity in international waters could violate sovereignty and international law. Where does this leave the United States and its southern neighbors? For now, the Trump administration says that these actions are justified as necessary self-defense to neutralize imminent threats against Americans. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution does grant the president broad leeway in the use of force when national interest and immediate harm are invoked, provided it does not amount to a formal declaration of war. However, the consequences are profound. Will the move truly deter the cartels, or will it push them to diversify and escalate their tactics? Will it strengthen or undermine regional cooperation on security and law enforcement? Could this open new legal and diplomatic flashpoints with affected countries like Venezuela, whose nationals have already been among those killed? One thing's clear: this is a gamble of historic proportions, both at home and abroad. As this story unfolds, the stakes are enormous, not just for the nearly 40,000 Americans killed by drug-related overdoses a year, but for the entire concept of how the U.S. fights transnational threats. Are we witnessing a necessary escalation, or the dangerous blurring of boundaries between crime and war? Time and the decisions made in the weeks and months ahead will tell. Stay tuned as we track every development in this high-stakes drama. If you want more in-depth, clear, and fearless analysis of global headlines that matter, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. This is your source for global and geopolitical news, breaking down the headlines that shape our world.